Hi there, it's me, Dr. Daniel, and I wanted to create a quick video to discuss some of the elements of understanding blood sugar regulation, the vicious cycles really of uncontrolled blood sugar, whether that's hyper or hypoglycemia, high blood sugar and low blood sugar. And then more important, if you chronically have elevated blood sugar, developing insulin resistance, and then the vicious cycles associated with that. The reason why I wanted to bring this up is this week I've received so many questions regarding blood sugar regulation, and there's so many people that just want to skip over that, and they're more concerned about some of the other clinical conditions that they're dealing with. But it's important to appreciate the fact that blood sugar regulation is a foundational energetics and metabolic system within the body. Every single chronic health condition that you can think of, whether we're talking about cancer, heart disease, the two leading causes of death, whether we're talking about autoimmunity, leaky gut, food sensitivities, immune dysregulation, skin disturbance, hormone imbalance, all of these things are going to be negatively influenced because of poor blood sugar regulation. So it is very important to make sure that we have a grasp, or at least get a handle on what is happening with our blood sugar. Now, what is elevated or high blood sugar? I would consider you to have elevated blood sugar if you're fasting blood sugar, meaning 2 hours after a meal or before having any food, just in a fasted state, your blood sugar is greater than 100. So that's elevated blood sugar. And we understand in the medical literature, it's well documented that anybody that has blood sugar elevated above 90, really, you have an increased risk of developing prediabetes and type 2 diabetes within the next 10 years. For type 2, it's a 66% increase. So these are things not to be taken lightly. They're indicators of metabolic dysfunction if you identify that that's what's happening, and it's very important that you begin to work on trying to correct it. And now is the time, right, before you develop full-blown diabetes. Another way to assess this would be to look at your triglycerides. If you see that you have elevated triglycerides, that's another thing to be paying attention to. Insulin resistance, or what we refer to as metabolic syndrome, this would be a blood sugar greater than 100, between 100 and 127 or 130. That's a pretty good indicator that you have insulin resistance, or you're trending towards that. Absolutely elevated triglycerides, elevated cholesterol, elevated LDL, low HDL, which is your, quote, good cholesterol, uric acid greater than 5.5. That's a very strong predictor of poor health outcomes just by itself, and longevity, and it's absolutely a metabolic marker. And then if you look at your total cholesterol, if your total cholesterol is 200, your triglycerides should be half of that or less. That's another way to kind of peek into your metabolism. So if somebody has a cholesterol of 200 and their triglycerides are 100 or less, that's great. If they have triglycerides of 150 or 200, that's poor metabolic capacity. And then finally, type 2 diabetes, I would say if your A1C is greater than 6.4, if your fasting blood sugar is greater than 140, if your insulin is greater than 40, these are all indicators. Now, what starts to happen? Well, if we're looking at this chart here, you have high blood sugar. High blood sugar itself is going to contribute to insulin resistance. Basically, the longer you have high blood sugar, you're going to have insulin that rises up. The more insulin, your cells become resistant to that, so you develop insulin resistance. Also, high blood sugar is going to result in the formation of something called glycated end products. Glycated end products are compounds that are produced from the combination of protein, fat, and sugar. And if you imagine, let's say, like if we're making a dessert and you have sugar in a pan and you heat it up, that sugar is going to become fried. That's basically a glycated end product, but that's happening within our vascular system, within our body, and it can create damage. So again, glycated end products produced from having high amounts of blood sugar combined with circulating fats and inflammation. Of course, glycated end products cause inflammation, and then inflammation in turn causes more glycated end products. So you can begin to understand or appreciate some of the cycles, right? The complexity of these, the physiological webs, if you will, of blood sugar dysregulation. Glycated end products also will feed into developing leaky gut. And leaky gut then contributes to something called endotoxemia, which is basically this process of where it develops inflammatory metabolites within the digestive tract. These metabolites travel to other parts of the body and can cause problems. So it becomes this global situation where you can have LPS developed in the gut because of leaky gut. travels up to the brain, contributes to brain fog, brain inflammation, so ADD, ADHD, cognitive decline, those types of things. Also, this inflammation, LPS, can travel to joints and can contribute to joint inflammation as well. So just keep that in mind. Again, these are very, very strong cycles, and you have to break these patterns. Endotoxemia itself can contribute to activation of lipocytes or fat cells, and so it's going to result in fat accumulation, fat activation. High blood sugar, like I said, causes insulin resistance. Insulin resistance in turn causes high blood sugar, so there's some cycles there. And then insulin resistance contributes to high insulin production itself, which not only gets you obese or contributes to obesity, but also develops insulin resistance. And then if we talk about the vicious cycle of insulin resistance and sedentarism, all this also contributes to us not wanting to exercise, not being motivated to move. And on one end, obviously, it's very hard to tell somebody who doesn't feel well that you just need to, get your butt up and start exercising and working your body and building muscle. I get that you don't want to do that, but that is very necessary in order to break these cycles. Any amount of work that you start doing is going to be better than none. Now, a sedentary lifestyle itself will contribute to insulin resistance. Insulin resistance, again, contributes to inflammation. Inflammation is going to contribute to mitochondrial dysfunction. Mitochondria are these cells that live within these structures that live within our cells that produce energy. So if you have chronic inflammation, it's going to damage those mitochondria. Those mitochondria produce energy. You're going to have less energy, which is going to contribute to muscle pain, muscle fatigue. And that, of course, is going to contribute to more sedentarism, right? Which then just continues this cycle. On the other end, chronic inflammation is going to hit our dopamine centers. It's going to result in reduced dopamine. Of course, that's going to eventually impact your motivation. It's going to impact your ability to move. You're just not going to feel well. Like I said, I understand that it can be difficult, but what I'm trying to help you to understand here is that these are vicious cycles that really need to be corrected and worked on and reversed. And if you find yourself caught into this area, you absolutely need to consider you need to increase your fibers, first of all, because fibers are going to help to blunt that blood sugar response. Maybe consider a paleo keto diet or a keto diet until your sugar cravings are gone, until inflammation is back down to the point to then you can work on exercise and physical activity. You can consider compounds to help, such as berberine, alpha lipoic acid, inositol. These are all very good compounds. Chromium is another one. Chromium picolinate is another one that's really good. But you got to really look at all of these factors and break this cycle before moving on. And this is also very important to get a handle on before you try to optimize hormones, or before you try to reverse leaky gut, or before you're trying to really get a handle on your flare-ups of autoimmunity. If you have blood sugar dysregulation itself, it's going to keep you in this place, right? So very important, again, to try to work on reversing this. Hope this helps. Hope this makes sense. If you have any questions, certainly feel free to reach out.